Hello and welcome. My name is Bartosz Pich. I'm Vice President of Products in Expos. Today, we're going to run first of the episode of our series of webinars focused on autonomy of testing. This is a very wild topic. This is pure AI combined with our legacy test automation. I think with test autonomy, we are addressing one of the biggest troubles, biggest hurdles when it comes to testing in ERP systems. And this series will talk through multiple needs which are outlined by the markets, by partners, by end customers. This series will answer what is actually autonomy of testing, why we actually never seen so far proper autonomy. And by answering that, we need to know actually what is needed to get the autonomy. So I think we are in the very unique situation where AI has significant impact on how you test. And I want to show you on examples what to expect now and in upcoming months, how it's going to evolve. So we're going to talk about some levels of autonomy, which are going to be introduced with every release of our product, focus on autonomy and actually something called observability. What I can tell you that Dynamics 365 is something which doesn't have yet observability, or it has it by a few months where we started this initiative. If you're going to take a look on the same ERP ecosystem, SAP, there is a significant part of the market focused on observability, and definitely there is a need because this market is valued for over $1 billion. So I think observability is a key asset for Dynamics, and I'm going to show you why. And on specific examples, you will learn how as a partner you can benefit, how as a customer can benefit, and further down the road, you'll be able to see our game changers. We're going to plan specific date for release of new wave, new functionalities that will make this autonomy even more effective. Like in Tesla, full self-driving mode, it's a levels, it's a stage initiative, which is just getting more and more valid to the market, more and more beneficial for end customer and partner. So now, let's focus on a few points I've prepared for you. And actually, let's talk about what is the autonomy of testing. To make it comparable with Tesla's, I think that's a very good example because it works and we already seen how it goes with self-driving. One of the elements which needs to be present in testing is business. Business users needs to be present. They need to provide us the knowledge. We need to take their head and actually extract the knowledge about business processes to know what to test, to know how to test, what to validate. And so far, our products focus on testing are in the market for over 12 years. We've seen a lot in Dynamics. And one of the biggest hurdles is actually that business users don't have time. Business users don't want to test. And the testing is very superficial. There are very superficial functionalities and software available on the market, which are promoted by Microsoft. So that topic, considering the one version and proactive quality update, is still something which needs attention. And even though it is a very important exercise to perform within every one version upgrade, it still is not a high priority for business. So if you're going to think about that as a constraint, if you're going to add some other constraints, if you prioritize them, you're going to see perfectly that if you would have business knowledge on the moment when you start this initiative of testing, we see that partners and end customers, they will be more keen to invest in that initiative. So we can clearly say that if you want to get testing, you need to have business. So if that's the constraint, if you're going to remove that constraint, it's going to be more autonomous. You'll be able to perform that activity without this key asset, which is the business knowledge, because you can get understanding what you need to test. Without them, only ask them for confirmation that we are testing the exact places that business would do. So what is the autonomy of testing? It is, in essence, something that takes out the business user interaction in such a heavy load. Ideally, we don't want the business to be involved in testing at all, with an exception. They need to participate in triage. So this is the moment where the system fails and we need to check if it is a feature or if it is a bug. So this is the moment where business has to be there because they need to be clear of what is introduced to the system and make sure that the system is built accordingly to their expectation. So there are some moments which we can't get rid of because the business is essential in that process, but we want to minimize their need to be part in the moment of designing the test. So simply saying we'll remove number of time needed to define the test cases, for review the test cases, and then operationally, ideally, we want to have them only for a partial time for validation. So again, test autonomy is a capability to build your test automation for your ERP system with smallest possible amount of the business user attendance in that project. And let's talk about why it was actually never possible. If you're going to take a look on the market, you will see that the autonomy is a very loud topic. And there are some graphs stating that autonomy is there. But if you're going to take a look closely what different vendors are telling about autonomy, it is actually just fixing the test cases. Is it autonomy? Not so much. You still need to pass that big hurdle, which is the availability of business. And in the essence, again, you can fix the test cases on the way, but you have to be careful to not make tampering of test cases. That is a separate topic. So I'm going to put this on the side and we can focus on this on the separate discussion, on the separate webinar, but let's focus then why the autonomy was never possible. And the key response and solution is actually observability. What is observability? If you could imagine like your Dynamics 365 is actually observed from every angle. I mean by this, every business user which is connected to the system, they are hooked into the agent which is observing every of their click, type, action selection they perform. That data from every account, from every user, which is spread across to your Dynamics 365 FSCM, is picked and transferred straight to the Azure cloud infrastructure, which still remains on the customer grounds. And that there is a data foundation which is built. That foundation is simply bigger and bigger with every click by every user. So you simply recognize how your users are working. That actually is the answer that you know what the business does, what the business users are performing in those day-by-day operations. So simply saying, if you're going to observe for 24 hours, you'll be able to tell, hey, in 24 hours, these are the operations done by the users. If you're going to observe for a week, you will know what they do for a week, for a month, for a year. That data retention can be so flexibly spread across the timeline that you can actually have reliable data for even 18 months of business operations, which are leading you to get understanding of testing coverage, of the business operations, what people do, and much more benefits we can talk about. So the foundation is here. We've observed for a few months, and then you take the data, you run this through the AI model, which unpacks from that whole lake of data what business processes, accordingly to business process catalog, are done in your system. This proposes to you what is the most common process done by the users, how they perform that. And this actually tells you that from the top activities, if they're going to be focused on sales or inventory transfers, you're going to have the list of top processes which you need to test because they are done daily. If there is something routine, daily activity done in the system, definitely that is something to focus on. That will be your critical smoke plan that you have to run even weekly or monthly, at least monthly, to make sure that the system is healthy. Continuing on that point, if you have the data about the business processes, you can actually aim for regression, for more comprehensive, more complex test cases, which are going to cover the entire ecosystem. So business process catalog, in that sense, is the essence which connects, because that gives you also foundation later on for other byproducts. So this is how observability and test automation connects to one ecosystem. And this actually this is a response why there was never something like test autonomy before, because XPlus actually right now is the only one vendor which has those two components, observability and test automation, so you know what to test and you test. And moving to the other important aspect is that there are multiple levels of autonomy. We are in very weird place now because we have to define some definitions. We have to define some wordings for technology we are building. So we've took the advantage to make a brainstorm in company to define what would be the future of autonomy. And we've outlined actually 5 propositions of what to expect in upcoming waves for test automation. And right now, the level 1 is broadly available. I will show you on the quick showcase how to deal with it. The level 1 simply is a base connection, observability and test automation. Observability defines what people are performing. I have full audit trail of people's action, and I can browse and unpack by my own without any AI, just watching how one specific business user is performing their day-by-day operations, and I can name and call what they do. And I can actually see how they validate the system sometimes, so I can build up proper test cases based on the raw data, watching how users are doing. And being honest, with our test automation projects, very often we've been doing that. We've been asking business to show us what they do, so we've been able to record test automation within that. We've been watching, so we have to be present, but that process was pretty common. It was visible in the projects. So then, if you have the data about the users, that will be level 1. You can unpack this manually. Then there is a second level, and level 2 brings this to more innovative place where that model of AI is introduced. And that is the moment where our multiple algorithms, through the 100% of the user actions, for the whole 24-hour session, if you work 24 hours, if you have smaller sessions of 4 hours where users are performing business operations, you can discover and cut those sessions into the real business patterns, so-called from business process scenario, or now they are actually called scenarios. So we are able to call what they were performing, and that by test manager is the duty to select what is actually a valid test case for us. So this is the level 2, which actually is also here. What we're going to introduce in a couple of releases will be taking this to the higher level, and AI healing. And that is something which gets even more, we can say, tricky for development, but for end users, for customers and partners, will mean that they're going to, again, remove another burden of work for building test cases. What to expect? We want to build you an AI healing mechanism which will be executed on every test case, which will be valid. So it will be selected by you. You're going to say, we have sales process creation, purchase order creation, inventory transfer. These 3 are valid, but I can't execute them on test machine. Why? Because there is no data. So AI will be so intelligent that it will tell that I can select this data set and this data set for that script. So the test cases will be reviewed by AI healing and proposed on the test automation mechanism with ready-to-use test cases, with not only one possibility to execute, but naturally, we aim for repeatability. We want to repeat one process 100 times so the autonomy of testing will be efficient. So, simple saying, think about that. You start observability of your Dynamics implementation. It goes on. You collect multiple gigabytes of data. After a while, you'll be able to propose test cases. In reality, even in one day, you can propose some meaningful test cases. Then time goes on. Test manager is continuously selecting another process by process. The test plan is growing with multiple test cases along, and then you select which one to run through AI healing. So they are signed off, they are prepared, and they have more data to be executed. And then at the end of the day, all those sign-off test cases can be executed by partner or end customer's test manager. And without the business attendance, you can run and validate your stability of D365 FSCM. And now let's see this in action. I will go to Observability application to see the data, unpack a test case, and run in test automation application, which builds a perfect platform for your D365 FSCM. Naturally, most of the accounts are utilizing single sign-on with Microsoft. Here, I'm going to provide my credentials. I'm going to sign in, and I can see the dashboard, but the most important aspect is naturally in the events. This is the capability to take a look on the foundation of the data to see all those actions done by the users. They are represented by two different elements, user sessions, so full user session from the beginning of opening of Dynamics and up to the closing the cart. We can see all the actions done by the user. And activity, it's a bug of all actions, individual clicks, actions by the users listed. So let's start with user sessions, which is pretty natural. I'm going to go here and select the date. So let's see our last week of operations on our Contoso machine, where we do test our observability app. And I can see here multiple sessions done, different time zone, different moments. You can actually see that there are multiple test cases executed. We have our in-house validation process here to make sure that the observability is best in class. And I can go here to see what steps were performed. So I can go on that session. I can see that this specific account was going through the vendor creation, and I can see all the steps, not only including when and by whom, but also I can see what this specific account was seeing on the moment of that interaction. So the observability gives you massive amount of context, of capabilities done by the specific account. And this specific process is pretty long. I can see then definition of the country address, selection of the tax exempt number, and so forth. Out of those specific contexts, you can actually you can craft from them test cases. So that's the essence which we are aiming for. So that's the one part, the capability of user sessions. So I can see that, but also activities. So this is, as mentioned, the capability to see all actions represented by the list. So you can have here multiple accounts visible as their actions in a list sense, in the list vision. So this gives me the chance to search for some specific action, like I want to see that specific error messages, or I want to see that specific label or that specific vendor interaction. So naturally, it's going to come to you, oh, there are much more broader usabilities out of that data. I can extract much more value, not only focus on testing. But today, we focus on autonomy. So I have that foundation, and I can go here to discovery patterns, which is aggregating all execution, so all of those activities into processes named by business process catalog. So currently the best possible way in D365 FSCM. And I can see here multiple test cases. I can actually see something interesting for me. I have create purchase order manually. I can go inside to details. And if I'm going to be interested, I can actually save that test case or that specific pattern as a test case. So I can go inside and I can see how the user was executing on the 5th of July, so a while ago. And I can go to the top and I can say, all right, I want to save this as a test case. So export, system downloads the test automation script. I can go to our executive automats test automation suite. And in the project, so the catalogs of all your test cases, I can find the place that was purchase creation. So I can go to purchases and I can go to scripts. And here I can import that new script that we just downloaded from the observability. After importing, the script is ready to use. It has all the data. It is a recipe how to perform purchase order creation. And again, no business user was involved. Data looks reliable for me, so I can simply play it back for us. So you can see how system will work on this example. Now, for those of you who don't know test automation by X+, here on the right side we have a panel which shows us all steps we're going to be introduced or played back. On the left-hand side we have dynamics. We don't log in. It is done automatically by something called a virtual user account. So always automatic. Right now I'm playing back this in foreground just so you can see this on example, but naturally in most cases our customers are playing back this in background because this is the moment where you can relax and focus on other initiatives where test automation is being just played back. Now you can see on the right hand side how system goes on. We have step-by-step execution for every step which will going to be performed. You're going to see status on the right-hand side. You can see warnings if something goes wrong, error messages with red cross if something actually failed on the test case. But that specific process, when it goes on, if I'm going to execute this in background, I can get documentation out of this initiative. So not even the autonomy is the value, but also having the actual test cases up to date accordingly to the business processes. You can always store documentation about the business processes, how to perform that. So this can have multiple other dimensions of impact on your business, like having documentation for business users if they forgot how they did this correction of the invoice because they do that once in a while. So this process goes on. After that, the history of the execution will contain the results. So you can play back this in background. You can run this in parallel with multiple sessions in the same moment, and so on and so forth. And simply, that's the autonomy of testing, meaning we don't need the business user account. We don't need the business user time to get understanding of what to test, because based on the real actions, we are combining them into the test cases and we are pushing them to the list of test automation test plan, and we can just observe and interact with them when something goes wrong. So now let's jump into the Q&A section. Please ask as many questions as you've got, because this will give us a bit more insights. How do you think about test automation, test autonomy, and so forth? Being honest, this solution called Discovery by X+ is the only one on the market which does test autonomy with a great foundation of observability. And if you are moving towards digitalization, Industry 4.0, towards autonomy of the ERP system, this is the only way to go. You need to have foundation of data, and this solution will give you that with no sweat.